Hey everybody, it's Busy Mark and I am back with another video, but before we begin, I am pleased to announce that The Modest Fitting has officially launched, a women's clothing boutique offering skirts and dresses that embody modesty, femininity, and beauty. To learn more about dresses like this one and others available for purchase, head over to themodestfitting.com. But without further ado, let's begin. Alright, if y'all have been following me for a while now, you know from my last update that I shared that I sometimes have an itchy scalp, which is a new development for me in my season of life. But what it means is that I have to wash my hair 1 to 2 times per week. And historically, I've always washed my hair once a month. And even in doing that, I never washed it. Even after a month had passed, I still didn't have dandruff or an itchy scalp or odor or anything. I just washed it because I'm like, man, it's been a month, let me wash it. Now that I'm in, I don't know why things have changed, but things have changed such that after a couple of, at max, a week, and I'll need to wash my hair just because itchy. And so what that has meant for me is that with washing comes detangling. And when you have curly textured, afro textury hair, the detangling process is one that needs to be done with great care. And I would say as done as least as few times as possible, because that's just an opportunity for breakage to occur, just given the structure and the design of afro textured, curly textured hair. And so for a while, I was washing my hair 1 to 2 times per week, detangling 1 to 2 times per week. And I just was like, I don't think that this is a good idea, given my hair texture. I think I need to lay off of the detangling. And so then that got me started thinking what kind of style could I put my hair in that could withstand regular and frequent washing, but not require that I detangle and reset my hair very often. And so I went to the internet, I went to YouTube, and as it stands right now, all the craze is mini twists. I knew that mini twists wasn't going to work for me because I have such a strong coily curl pattern that whenever I put twists in my hair, and as soon as it gets wet, my curl pattern fights against the twists and it will unravel and it'll swell and all of those things. And so I thought, well, let me give mini braids a try. And so I did. And the first set of mini braids I did, they were rather large, and so didn't really give the volume. It didn't look very sophisticated. It didn't look even age appropriate on me. It just didn't look that great. But I did it again, and this time I made them much smaller, and the braids I think turned out a lot better. I've had them in for a month and a half now, and that's with washes 1 to 2 times per week. And they're, for the most part, holding their shape and their form, and to maintain them so that the washing and the water doesn't cause them to unravel, I have been braiding my hair in large sections every time I wash, and also at night before bed, each and every night. For those of you guys who are in the lock community, you know that putting braids in your hair is one of the popular methods used to start locks. And while I'm not saying that I'm going to be starting another set of locks, I just thought I would take the time to discuss the method of braid locks, or using braids to start locks, and speak in general terms, and then also just some pointers for people who have 4C hair, and information that might be helpful to them if they wanted to start. So the pros in starting locks with braids is that braids are less likely to unravel when compared to two-strand twists. They tend to just be able to hold shape, and they're a weaving pattern of the hair that tends to have a little bit more integrity and can hold its shape despite manipulation and water. And so braids are a popular option for people who don't want to spend a lot of time having to retwist or regather hair once it's been washed and whatnot. The other thing is, because the braids tend to hold to their shape and they don't unravel, when it comes to starting locks, they can greatly reduce your chances for developing bunching. Bunching is when the starter lock has been put in place, but for whatever reason, it has expanded or it has swelled and it's lost shape. And so it gets kind of big. So the 2-strand twist might come apart and it swells, or the braid may come apart and it swells. That swollen part of the starter lock will fill with shed hair as the months go on. So you'll have like a really skinny lock with this bulbous end that's bunching. And so braids, because they tend to hold their shape a little bit better and don't unravel, doesn't allow for the hair to swell and lose shape and then make that portion of the lock vulnerable to the development of bunching. And so braiding can be a good option if you're trying to keep bunching to a minimum. One of the cons for starting locks with braids is that for a lot of people, the braid pattern holds its shape so well that it never actually transitions into a lock. And so there are people who have started with braids and like they're 6 and 7 years in, and the end of their hair, it's still that beautifully plaited braid rope pattern that just never budged and didn't go away. And so for some people, they don't want to start with braids because they're afraid that if they're starting with braids, but the ultimate goal is locks, they want those locks to come in. They don't want to keep the braids. And so for some people, that is a deterrent from starting with locks. This is a part that I wanted to direct specifically to my sisters with 4C hair. Again, I'm not saying that I'm starting locks, but if I were to start locks, I don't think that I would necessarily have the issue with the braid pattern never disappearing, because what I've observed, I have 4A type hair. And what I have seen is that with water, even with the braiding and banding, my curl pattern still fights against the braid pattern enough that it opens just slightly. So with those little holes in the braids, it creates just enough room for shed hairs that might be released from the scalp to migrate up and down the lock and get that locking process started. And so what I have come to observe is that if you have 4C hair, that 4C hair pattern holds so well to the braid pattern, which is why I think a lot of people don't see the braid pattern go away. I suspect that most of the people who don't see it go away have 4C hair. And so given that 4C hair holds the braid pattern, and the further you get away from 4C, it tends to kind of like lose, you know, the hair will unravel from the braid. It'll kind of slip out. You may just have some flyaways. They just kind of wiggle their way out of the braid. If you have 4A hair, it tends to wiggle a little and create space, and it undoes the braid pattern a little bit. If you have 4C hair, it holds to that braid pattern really, really rigidly, which is great if you are looking to use braids as a long-term but not permanent protective style. Let's say you just want to put your hair in a style that will reduce manipulation. You won't be brushing, you won't be combing, and it can withstand washing. If you have 4C hair, braids would be perfect for you. You could probably put a set of braids in at the start of summer, leave them for the entire summer, and not have to subject your hair to all that brushing and combing and detangling. And at the end of the summer, that braid pattern will still be in there quite nicely, and it'll be easier to take it apart. If you are wanting to start locks with 4C hair, that braid pattern is gonna hold, and it probably isn't gonna disappear. And so that portion that's braided will likely stay braids. If you have 4A hair, so further away from the 4C pattern, that braid will hold better than a 2-strand twist, but it's not gonna hold so well that it's like impervious to unraveling. There will be a degree of unraveling the further away you go from 4C hair. So that means if you're using it as a long-term but not permanent style, you're gonna see your hair frizz a lot more than someone with 4C hair. You're gonna see the braids kind of unraveling at the ends more than you would with someone with 4C hair. But that also means if you're wanting to start locks and you have 4A somewhere in that family, the braids might be a good option because it will loosen, it will unravel a little bit and create those holes for those shed hairs to get the process started. And so anyway, this has been great for me. I wanted to do something that would just get my hands, not necessarily my hands on hair, but my brushes. I've had locks before the last set, I had them for a little, maybe more than 4 years. So I just wasn't used to seeing any shed hair because, as you know, with locks, the shed hair, every time it releases from the scalp, it just stays in the lock and it creates these beautiful woven ropes of hair. And so you don't ever see shed hair. So transitioning out of locks to loose natural hair, I would be brushing and then I'd see all this shed hair in my brush and it just kind of freaked me out. And so I was like, let me put my hair in a style that I don't have to risk unnecessary breakage or damage to my hair from the brushing. And the braids have been really good. I think my plan is to keep them in for the summer because it's just been great. I can wash my hair as often as I need to, and I haven't had any issues with just freaking myself out with shed hair in the shower. So, but anyway, as I was noticing, I'm kind of removed from the natural hair community on YouTube. I just haven't been producing a lot of content, so I haven't seen it. But I thought it was cool that the new thing right now is like mini twists and mini braids. If you have experience with mini twists and mini braids, how have you been maintaining them? Do you wear them for the summer? How long do you keep them in? In some instances, I've seen that some people will keep them in for 2 months, sometimes 3 months. What kind of products do you use? I'm using Head and Shoulders to deal with that itchy scalp. I don't use a conditioner. I just put shea nut oil on my hair and I just leave it at that. And that tends to keep my hair really moisturized. It's not dry, it's not brittle. But what are you guys doing? How long do you keep it in? What products do you use to maintain? Are you also braiding and banding like I am to inhibit unraveling? What other things might you be doing? Leave all of that in the comment section below. But as always, thank you, and until next time.